All right. Good evening, everyone. Brandino is not able to make it this evening, so I'm going to be taking over in his absence. Just first want to start making sure I have everybody here. Director Koo, are you present?
Hey, good evening.
All right. Director Jeffries?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Director Stauffer?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. And Dr. Prine?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. All right, great. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you don't mind, please standing and joining me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Director Stauffer, would you care to read our vision and mission statement?
Yes, thank you. Vision: our community inspires and prepares each student to thrive. And then going back and then to the mission, in connection with our community, the Sequim School District empowers staff to inspire hope and provide flexible, innovative learning opportunities in a safe and respectful environment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I did realize that I wanted to make sure to address our virtual meeting guidelines and safety protocol as well. The public comment will be received in written format and live at the in-person meeting. To submit written public comment, please email tnorman@sequimschools.org. And just a reminder for attendees and board members to please mute your mic and disable your video. And also to note that this meeting will be recorded. So sorry, I skipped over that part. And next we're going to do our land acknowledgement. Director Koo, would you care to read our land acknowledgement?
Yeah, you got it, boss. The Sequim School District administrative and school buildings sit on the ancestral lands of the Squam people. While the Squam traditionally come from one nation, history has led to the formation of three sovereign Squam tribal governments. The Lower Elwha Squam tribe, located in Port Angeles, Jamestown Squam tribe, located in Sequim, and the Port Gamble Squam tribe, located in Kingston. The district's primary partnership is with the Jamestown Squam tribe. Today, the tribe and district share a partnership that includes official consultation on program and funding changes that may directly affect American Indian and Alaska Native students, as well as holistic service planning for students to remain successful in their educational journeys.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have approval of minutes, and I'll be happy to hear a motion.
Motion from Director Stauffer for approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. And Director Stauffer, I'm assuming it's all the minutes listed, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Motion for all the minutes of so that would be the regular meeting we had on June 7th, the policy workshop on June 9th, the June 10th special meeting minutes, and then wrapping up the list with June 18th, our special meeting minutes from our annual board workshop. Thank you.
Okay. Opening that up for discussion, and I have a few notes on those as well, but I'm going to go to Director Jeffries first. Director Jeffries, are you there?
I was just looking at the minutes. Yep,
Oh, okay.
I was just looking at the minutes again. We have the minutes on June 7th, regular minutes, have Brian Koo in two places at once. He's present and he's virtual at the same time. I know he's quick, but I don't know if he's that quick.
Good catch. Good catch. Thank you. Also, a couple of things on the June 7th that caught my eye. So as long as there's not objection to these small corrections, on my under board comments under myself, I believe I talked about that this would be a year that we'd never forget, and I think it's listed never regret. So you able to make that change easy enough, Tracy?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And then the other thing that I noticed on also on the June 7th was when we were making a decision regarding the capital projects, there was I do remember that Director Koo had indicated that he would make a motion, but I think on there it's listed that he did make a motion regarding the approval of the other firm for capital projects. But I believe he was just speaking to the fact that he was prepared. I don't believe he actually made a motion. Is that your recollection as well, Director Koo?
That is, and just to clear my mind of any cobwebs, I went back and listened to it this afternoon, and indeed our recollections were accurate.
Okay. Excellent. So I guess that would just mean that would be more in the discussion portion. That's easy enough to make that correction as well, Tracy.
I did, and I'm feeling like the referees when they get to go back and check now. It's very nice. Thank you.
No problem. And then one little small change I just noticed. We're not used to necessarily having meetings in the morning, but I did already bring this to Tracy's attention, but on June 18th, there were some times that indicated PM, but they were actually AM. So, so as long as there's no objection to approving with those changes, which I'm assuming there's not, we will we'll go ahead and call for that vote. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving those minutes with those corrections as indicated, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, motion approved. Now on to our agenda. Can I get a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, seeing no changes from the floor, I'd move to approve the agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Jeffries.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, approved. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We're going to open that up to discussion. I do have one thing I want to point out, but I'm going to go to Director Koo first.
Sure, thank you. Certainly not at the exclusion of other, personnel changing. This is an exciting time of year when we're wishing the best to those who are leaving the district, but also welcoming some new faces in or familiar faces in new positions. But I just want to mention a couple folks. Actually, I'll just mention all three since they're retiring. Mr. Vincent, I believe that's Mr. Vincent, excuse me, from the middle school. Forgive me if I got that wrong. And Mr. Lorenzen from the high school, and Mrs. Olson from the middle school. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Mrs. Olson just because her work has touched my own household and family, and just excellent job, I believe, as a parent that she has done in developing and breathing new life into our high cap program. I am sad to see her leave the district, but genuinely wish her well and her family well wherever she goes. But just a heartfelt thank you from the Koo household for her work in this district, and be big shoes to fill here.
Thank you. Director, I didn't see which one was first. Director Jeffries?
Sure, I guess I'll just double checking there. Brian, did you say they were retiring or resigning?
Good catch. They are resigning, but regardless of the case, I believe they're leaving the district. But good point.
I agree. I mean, kudos to them. They served the district well, and it's going to be hard to replace them for sure, but it can be done.
Director Stauffer?
Yes, thank you. I would also note Mr. Lorenzen, who I've known since the summer of 2011 when him and his family moved up here from Reno Sparks, and I got the honor of being his choir booster president for a few years there, and just applaud his direction with our music program at both the high school and middle school, and then also Jody Olson. And then from there, I'd like to note the donation we are receiving from the Sequim Food Bank, the cards that help with our summer lunch program for our students. So those two items, thank you very much.
Thank you. And also, just before I call for the vote on this, this is something that caught both my attention and Dr. Prine's attention just shortly before the meeting under contracts. We noticed, although there's a summary of changes regarding our administrator contract, we noticed that it didn't have the whole contract in its entirety. And we just had some very brief discussion on if that would mean that we should bring back that full contract in a subsequent meeting, or if we should actually pull this off and table it, or a few different type things that we could do to address that. But we did want to recognize that we should have the full contract in its entirety in addition to a summary. So I would welcome any feedback from any of the other board members on the best way to proceed with that. Director Koo?
Yeah, that's a great observation. And my inclination here, and I don't want to slow things down with process, but just in the spirit of, trying to do everything with dotting our I's and crossing our T's, it may be prudent to table the matter and bring it back where the full contract is there. To be clear, I have no hesitation on approving that at this point, but as a matter of process, that may be the prudent approach. I could be talked out of that, though, if my colleagues feel differently, but those are just my initial thoughts.
Director Jeffries.
I assume we'd have to amend the motion to approve the consent agenda, but let me ask maybe Dr. Prine, if we delay this, is that a significant problem? Because that would be into July before we could approve it, unless we had called some kind of special public meeting.
Yeah, Dr. Prine, could you comment on that?
Yeah. So if you wanted to pull the SAA agreement and have it in its entirety in July, that would be fine. If you decide to pull the SAA agreement summary off and the contracts off, then we will need a special meeting to approve that, because contracts go into effect July 1st.
Okay. Director, okay. And I'm certainly fine with either course of action to resolve it. Director Stauffer?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I'm good with as is. I have the trust and faith of our HR department and Dr. Prine to go forth with this, and I would not want to delay any compensation or further contract discussions that would hinder these excellent employees. Thank you.
Director Koo?
Yeah, thank you. And I know we're kind of going against the spirit of the consent agenda here, but if the chair will permit me, a question to our HR director, just of any material changes year over year to the broader SAA contract that the board should be aware of?
And
Thank you, Director Koo. No, there are no other changes other than the changes that we have already discussed with the board. The salary piece was approved last January, I believe it is. And so now we're bringing language forward to be approved. So to move the language approval on until the entire agenda is, or the entire agreement is attached, wouldn't be a significant issue because the salary schedule was approved last January by the board.
Okay, thank you.
Director Jeffers?
That was a similar question that I had, and just to make sure we're not at in any legal risk by approving it tonight, which I'm in favor of.
Either Dr. Prine or Victoria can comment on
Victoria,
that.
if you want to jump in, I can jump in after you're done.
I can, yes. Thank you, Director Jeffries. We should not be in any legal issues at all. This is something that we've been in communication with the board about. And again, it's at this point, we're looking at language only. And I think we're okay either way. If you'd like to approve the language at a later meeting when the entire contract is attached, that would be fine, because we have the board on record as approving the salary schedule earlier this year.
Dr. Prine?
I was just going to concur with that. So Victoria and I are on the same page. I think I would be, to be honest with you, I'd be more comfortable if you pulled this piece off so we could put the whole contract on together. But you have approved the salary schedule, and that is back in, I want to say December 14th, possibly, meeting. And so, but it is pretty critical to get the contracts approved since we do have a start date of July 1.
Okay. So I believe that what we would want to do is to make an amendment, if somebody would be so inclined to make that motion. That's what you're recommending, correct, Dr. Prine, that we amend the consent agenda?
Yes, that you amend it to and pull off the SAA agreement summary and leave everything else on the consent agenda as is.
Okay, thank you. Director Jeffers.
I move to amend the previous motion to allow us to pull off the SAA agreement summary at this time, and we'll take a look at it in July.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded to remove that from the consent agenda to look at through July. Any further discussion on that? All right, so we'll just be voting on the amendment, and then after that, we'll vote on the consent agenda without this item. So all those in favor of removing this item, the SAA agreement, from the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, that passes. So now we are back to just the consent agenda without the SAA contract on that. So, which is the main motion. And there has already been a motion for that. So I think now it's just any other discussion on the consent agenda. All right. All those in favor of approving consent agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Motion passes. Thank you. And next we are on to public comments, I believe. And we do not have anybody signed up for live public comments, but the board did receive a letter that I will go ahead and read. And this is from Beth Smithson. Dear Sequim School Board and administrators, I am writing to strongly discourage Sequim School District from implementing the state requirements related to the 2021 to 2022 school year, specifically the wearing of masks by students, teachers, and administrators. The reopening of Washington schools was driven by a declaration of a statewide mental health crisis. Likewise, the nature of my request is in the same spirit of preserving the health and well-being of our children. Reopening Sequim schools was the essential first step, but full recovery has since been impeded by unnecessary rules and uninformed protection measures. It is time to recognize and remove the detrimental practice of mandatory mask wearing. Here are some reasons why face coverings should be optional for the 2021 to 2022 school year. Number one, the CDC and Washington State Department of Health have recognized that masks do not protect the wearer from contracting COVID-19. The director of the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases said that typical cloth masks are not really effective in keeping out the virus, which is small enough to pass through the material. The CDC statistics and published articles have revealed that school-aged children are resilient to the COVID-19 virus, and when infected, have lower rates of hospitalization and mortality than those exposed to influenza. Number four, there has been significant increase in physical, mental, and emotional medical conditions related to mask wearing. Number five, parents and caregivers should decide if a child should wear a face covering. It is a personal choice. Number six, you are empowered and obligated to make this decision for our district. In his proclamation regarding prophylactics and returning to school, Governor Inslee stated, quote, school districts are permitted but not required to follow CDC's guidance immediately. B, on May 13th, 2021, the Washington State DOH declared substantive decisions with respect to the implementation of these requirements are best made in coordination with the local school board and with input from the local health jurisdiction. C, the board itself has identified its primary duties as serving primarily as a legislative body, having final authority in all matters concerning the operation of public schools in the district, and speaks for the people on matters of needs and goals regarding children and their education. Recent announcement, masks will be optional in New York State schools starting Monday. Starting July 2nd, Mariners will open to 100% capacity with no health mask restrictions. Why on earth would it be okay for thousands of people to be in a stadium while our children are masked 6+ hours, 5 days a week? Please explain that science to me. School boards and superintendents all over the country are standing up to protect students. Will you have the courage to represent the expressed concerns of this community and the health and wellness of our children? You can make the decision to unmask our children. Please put your political agendas aside and do what's right for the Sequim School District. Mask choice now. Respectfully, Beth Smithson and 125+ parents/community members. Unmask our kids, Sequim. Okay. And moving on in the agenda, we have our no student board rep, no student reports until September. So that brings us to board communication. And we'll start with Director Koo.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, my camera is not working, so you miss out on the benefit of seeing my ugly mug. A couple things I've mentioned already are resigning, departing teachers. Mr. Lorenzen, I didn't comment too much there, but obviously has had a significant impact in the district. I've nary heard a critical word of his work here, and I've seen it firsthand and heard from many others who've been closer to the program. So my best wishes to him in what awaits him next, and thank you to him and our other departing staff for their service to this district. The other thing I wanted to mention too, and it certainly goes without saying to anyone who was able to attend, but it's such a blessing to be able to be a part of the graduation proceedings for our class of 2021. it's hard not to get excited to see them at that threshold of, so many years of hard work. And I was really kind of struck with the profundity in the moment of looking out over the crowd. And we had a capacity limited crowd out there. So in many senses, we're really seeing the tribe behind each one of those graduating students. And I just felt a sense of gratitude to those folks, those parents, those siblings, aunts and uncles, perhaps, and looking out over the crowd and not only recognizing their pride in the moment, but just my gratitude going out to them for enduring what's been, unplanned hardship with this pandemic crisis. And I know there's been a lot of, concern and turmoil and discontent with, various components of that, including, frankly, how the district has responded to it. But I couldn't be more grateful for their doggedness and stick-withedness, as a district. And I feel that in our own part, we all collectively had a role in getting those students across that stage. So this year, just have to note, it was a little extra special. And cheers to the graduates and wherever their lives past may take them. Finally, and we just got off of it, I appreciated the letter that was sent in regarding the masks. Thought it was very well written. I was reminded of that scene in Saving Private Ryan where the sergeant or somebody was telling the other troops, okay, watch this. This is how you make your case or make your complaint in this case. And I don't mean to be flippant about it, but I thought it was very well put together. I do agree. I've said it before, and I continue to agree that masks, if we reach a certain point in our recovery from this pandemic, hopefully we can move to optional to become a personal and household choice. I understand that it's, fraught with differing opinions. I'm disheartened that it's become a political lightning rod. And sadly, it seems almost partisan based. I've been disheartened to see my colleagues, understandably, but disheartened nonetheless, to wave around the mantle of science, as if any given one of us have the latest in virology and how to recover from such an event. But I do believe something we should continue to talk about. As a point of clarification, and I dug into this a little bit more to remind myself who has the authority. This board does indeed enjoy that authority along with our county health director. So frankly, if she or he at a later date says, nope, masks are required, that's an authority that we are unable to usurp. But when asking, and I say this because I think there's been a lot of dialogue on this topic nationally, but also at a local level of who has the pen to make a decision about these sort of things. And the board does have an authority and a responsibility to engage. So I'm hopeful at this time. We have the blessing of having our summer season ahead of us and a little bit of time to continue to recover. Allegedly in 9 days, the state will open up again. So we'll have that pivot point by which to move forward as a community. But I would just encourage us to remain engaged on this topic, continue to listen to all sides, and certainly as best we can, continuing to listen to the scientific and medical authorities that we rely on. But I'm looking forward to working with this. I appreciate the outreach. And it was loud and clear, heard on this end. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Koo. Director Jeffries.
Yep. I'm just kind of looking at my calendar, trying to remind myself. It seems like it's been the summer and the ending of school and everything else that just moves right along. We had a board policy workshop on Wednesday the 9th, and I requested a room over at the offices so that I could attend virtually, and I attended from the professional development room all by myself, so I could finish and go over to the Dungeness Valley, Dungeness virtual school presentation by Principal Riccobini and his staff. And it was a fantastic presentation. Especially of note were a couple of parents that spoke out in favor, and especially one young man who got up and spoke, very well spoken, and I was really impressed with what he had to say. So I think the virtual school is probably here to stay and probably is going to grow, and we need to do what we can to support those efforts. Also, graduation. Yeah, this was my first graduation. I didn't attend last year because of all the COVID-ness. And it was both an honor and it was fun. One thing that stands out in my mind is Principal Langston mentioning that for that class, the class of 2021, the first time they'd all been together in about a little over a year was at graduation practice on that previous Wednesday. So that's, I hadn't really stopped to think about that. And that's a mix for a unique senior year that these seniors will never forget. I know there were several moving on celebrations at Grey Wolf and at Helen Haller and at the middle school. So big transitional changes for students and families as their kids move to the next level. So that's really exciting. And other than that, nothing else. Well, I would be beyond me to forget to last Monday, the 14th, I wish my wife happy anniversary. It was our 52nd anniversary. And so I would appreciate her putting up with me going to all these meetings all the time. So thank you. Oh, I would say that on the letter that was read, maybe Dr. Prime will have more to say, but we are under requirements, rules, and we have limited discretion on what we can do based on public health, based on risk assessments from our insurance agents. And yeah, I hope that by fall or early fall that the masks could become optional, but right now they're required, and that's the way they're going to stay until we hear different. Other than that, I'm done. It's hot where I'm sitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jeffries. Going now to Director Stauffer.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I appreciate the input from a community member on the mask protocols, and I also very much appreciate our district nurse, Sonia Bittner, and her work with our county health officer. And I'm in agreement with Director Jeffries there on the risk management and those items there. And yes, it warrants further discussion, and it's June, and maybe by August, when we open the doors fully for those 5 days, we'll have a clearer picture. From there, I also attended that Dungeness Virtual Academy presentation, and thank you, Principal Riccobini and the staff there for their work there. And the student that stood up and spoke, his name was Devon Curry. I think I got that right. But I still owe him a thank you card. But he was one of the best presenters for this. And then there was a young a Coast Guard family which remembered or reminded me of the challenges of our military families, and the student there was the same age of my daughter back in 6th grade when those challenges. And so I can see the Dungeness Virtual Academy as being just another benefit to ensure we can provide public education to all of our students. Also, same words of gratitude on the graduation and the speeches from those 6 valedictorians and the class speaker and the staff speaker just demonstrated the resilience of those students, and they are representing SQUEM well and will represent SQUEM well. And then I attended the Moving On event at Helen Howler, and that was just a lot of fun seeing those kids come through there, and the staff and parents. So it was a joy attending that. From there, a couple of community events. Tomorrow, those who are chamber members and just community of SQUEM, there's a night at the Lefties, and $4 ticket for being a chamber member. So I think the game starts at 6:30. And then Saturday, there's a cleaning up of Winsby Park, which is right behind of Jose's, and just come out with your rakes and weed eaters, and gonna spend some time cleaning that up. From there, I'll move over to some legislative items. And Tracy, could you pull up either of those two? How about yeah, thank you. So this slide represents the year-round calendar of legislative outreach, and we're down there in that April, June, and June is leaving like a freight train. So we can just almost move straight up into July to what is the work ahead. And then you can see the rest of the calendar there. Tracy, can you move to the other one, please? And this, if you look down there on the lower right, May, July, WASDA committees review and refine all proposals. So that's what is occurring right now with WASDA's legislative committee. And Friday, Saturday, that's where you'll find me for a couple of days looking at proposals and then positions to take us into the 22 legislative session. And please reach out if you got questions. I send those notices out to all the colleagues here, so you should be able to see them. Also on Wednesday, WASDA and WASA have a equity webinar, and I know that I'm in the evening session on Wednesday, and I think they have a couple other board members and the superintendent are in the day. So I'm appreciative of WASDA and WASA providing those training opportunities for us. And then when I think of some things coming out in the community also, tomorrow at the Port Angeles Business Association, there's a forum for school board directors that are running in Port Angeles School District. And then on 1 July, the League of Women Voters has a forum for SQUEM school board position at large, and that's a virtual event. And otherwise, thank you for joining us tonight.
Great. Thank you, Director Stauffer. And a couple of brief comments on that note from myself, and sort of directly related to Director Stauffer. I did notice that we do have a couple of school board candidates tonight at the meeting, so just want to welcome you, school board candidates, and thank you for joining us this evening. Also was very happy to be present at our the high school graduation ceremony. Honored to be a part of that, but just to see those emotions from the students with such a significant event for them, and it was nice that we were able to all come together and keep things safe, of course, but come together. So I want to thank all those that were involved with putting that event together. I definitely appreciated that. And also reflecting on some of the conversations about the masks. It's and speaking as a teacher, particularly of primary students, I can appreciate the desire to have the masks off. In fact, in a classroom, it may not come as a surprise, but there's just so much communicated just through facial expressions. So just that aspect of teaching, it would be certainly nice to be past the mask state of things, just from a nonverbal communication factor for sure. but I certainly do reflect on what Director Jeffries had said, and one of the biggest learning curves for me coming to the board is just really understanding that even when things come to us as a recommendation, which was done last year, last school year at this point, but school year before last, I guess technically, that even when things come to us as a recommendation, there's sometimes a legal liability for our district for not following that recommendation. And so this has been a lot of the things that we've been learning as a board, and I do take the legal liability aspect very seriously, because at that point then we're playing with potential dollars that are meant for students, and we certainly don't want those to be lost in those cases. So it's a very complicated situation to consider when we consider all aspects, but definitely want to abide by those, whether it be recommendations, mandates, however it is, by those professionals in the field to help steer us the right direction with regard to that. So appreciate everybody's comments on the matter on all subjects, and we will go ahead and move on the agenda. So next we have our reports to the board, and we're going to start off with our annual health report from Sonia. Do we have Sonia here?
Good evening, directors. Can you see and hear me?
You can.
Okay,
welcome.
Good. Thank you. So as a rule, in this board meeting, I do an overview of what health services does every year, but obviously this year was different. So first of all, I'd like to point out that really my focus is student health, family information, certainly supporting staff in our district. But if you'll go on to the second slide, Tracy. Oh, and as long as you're there, Tracy, will you give me a 12-minute time so that we have a few minutes for questions? Because I know I can tend to go over. So health services did everything they always do, with the exception for the mass school screening. We did a lot of screening this year through the health room. All of our health clerks, which this is my point to bring in how much hard work they do for the district. Sherry Hendrickson, Haller Health Clerk, has been with the district 30 years this year. Cassie Cobb works a 4-hour position there. She's excellent with the students and performing multiple medical procedures. Celine Frick at Squim High School, Jane Salee at Grey Wolf Elementary, and Jenny Meisenberg. And I'm going to have you skip down to the last bullet about changes to the immunization requirements there. There were a lot of changes this year. Even the new certificate of immunization status form now has 7 points to confirm, aside from the actual vaccinations listed on it. And we are now part of the Department of Health's Immunization Information System school module. And what that took from Artis Mangano this year was probably a year of her life, literally, if not figuratively. She went through every vaccination record of every student in the district, put it in the module, and created rosters for every single school. It was a huge work that culminated in our annual immunization report, which, because of this new system, the state was able to download directly for us, and we did get confirmation that was done in March. So a lot of work from Artis, and she also has been with the district 30 years this year. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to basically go over a toolkit that the CDC provided for K-12 schools. What they really wanted was to be able to go through lists so that schools could examine their own unique circumstances and make the best proactive decisions for students, staff, and families. And tonight, I'm doing the last bullet point, sharing data, but throughout my presentation, we will be looking at the factors identified, talking about the mitigation strategies and all the other things in this document, which I do believe I attached for the directors. So if we go to the next slide, I listed a lot. We don't have to go through every one of these, but I have to confess I was pretty proud because the next 2 pages are a list of the mitigations in place, and the Sequim School District put every one of them in place. The only one I can't attest to is this bullet point that says improvements to ventilation systems, because I think our ventilation systems work pretty well already. So that would be something I'd have to confirm with John McCandy, but all the other mitigations listed on this page, if you go down to the next page, were addressed and included in what we did to prevent COVID in the Sequim School District this year. So I will go ahead and move on to some of the outcomes. What I addressed here was what facilitated or caused barriers to those implementation strategies. School infrastructure was listed, and that's where they denoted how many nurses there were. And in a perfect world, there's only one thing that I wish I could have duplicated myself and created a circumstance for, and that was to do actual COVID testing. You know, everything else was done, and with the help of school health services, all of the health clerks, and certainly our building's point of contact people, we were able to do a really great job. I did do some COVID testing at school, and the high school wrestling team did COVID testing, but there were a couple other opportunities that, although it wasn't necessary, it might have been nice to be able to provide it. Also, just the stigma around COVID was a barrier. There's a lot of people who didn't want to share information because of that. And again, there were some parental attitudes to make sure that, as noted in our previous letter that you all just addressed, that, you know, parents do have opinions about what happens at school, and some things were a little harder to accept than others. Okay, moving on. So what did we use for guidance? Public health, the OSPI, and certainly our CDC and Department of Health guidelines as directed by Dr. Berry in Public Health. And then the other thing always taken into consideration was where were our transmission levels at? That was very important to us last November when the decision was made to not have in-person learning, and continues, I think, even now to what we will see regarding our fall direction from Clallam County Public Health. So the number of students kept home, sent home, we're going to go over that a little later in this. You'll also see the number of students tested positive. Canceled classes will be included, but the double asterisk there, number and size of outbreaks, I was very happy to say none. We did not have an outbreak in the Sequim School District. One of the most difficult parts of contact tracing is by the time somebody actually tests positive for COVID, they're usually at least 4 or 5 days out from that, sometimes as long as 2 weeks. And then that's when we go back and start contact tracing. So in view of that difficulty, that it can even be up to 2 weeks in some of those cases by the time the person realized that they were sick and decided to get tested and decided to share those results, I think that's pretty great too. So I am not going to go through everything in the toolkit, because some of the things that weren't just focused on student health, there was information I didn't have access to, student faculty ratios, funding, technology. So I've really just addressed that part. So the number of students we had who tested positive for COVID, and that doesn't mean they were all at school, but we only had 20 in elementary schools, including OPA, and 21 in the middle school and high school. I contact traced probably at least 2 to 3 times every week, most of the time with the wonderful outcome of being able to know that that student wasn't at school ill or during the 48 hours prior to symptoms. We did end up sending an exposure concern letter home 6 times from the district because of a concern for exposure. But every time that we had one that we case managed and went back to the exposure concern letter, the Department of Health did not feel there had been an exposure, and that turned out to be true. There was no exposures in our school district. So what we did have is listed here. The one team in April consisted of 8 students being affected. And in regard to all of this, it is the total individuals of students who were at school and created a potential for exposure, which resulted in no exposures, mind you, was a total of 12 students. And how'd we do this? Because that's pretty great. Well, the Washington Department of Health addressed very early on in the year specific roles. And these roles were fulfilled across the district. The district COVID-19 coordinator, and that's on the next slide. All of those things occurred, and Dr. Prine was really the point person in communicating with Dr. Berry. I did meet with her and the school nurses once a week. That was very medically skewed to talk about student health, and then we would be updated on what the superintendents are told. So it was truly a team effort. And going on to the school COVID-19 coordinators, school health services fulfilled these roles. The second to the last bullet, though, those disseminating the procedures and protocols and the multitude of questions that came in from teachers did go through our building point of contacts. And that was David Updike at Haller, Jennifer Lopez at Grey Wolf, Candace Ward, Leanne Parker, and Christy Queen at the high school. And they were very, very caring in their approach. And we had a lot of communication this year. Moving on to the COVID-19 screening lead, again, that was a lot of health services. However, it did fall to the building point of contacts to discuss staff who may not have been appropriately masked or any other concerns with that. And once again, I can't say of what a great team it was to work with this year. And the last one, infection control lead, that was really, you know, I dealt with the health rooms, but our building point of contacts dealt with making sure that custodial staff were cleaning those affected areas, as well as the health clerks, because we did have separate isolation rooms. Actually, I will say that we used our isolation rooms, but not for a single student who had a fever and a cough and all of the very pronounced symptoms. So we were pretty happy with that. And then the, of course, the maintenance department and all the custodians were at ground zero with that. So in the next slide, we made so many calls home. You know, student health has never been this black and white, you know, and I've always prioritized just treating each child. Thank you, Tracy. And for their specific symptoms. So we did use this chart. It was very helpful. It was a little difficult for families and health services to go with sometimes when we felt it might have been an allergy or something else going on, but I think the results speak for themselves. And going on to the next slide. So what we did early on or later on in September, when we realized that even though half the students were in school at any given time, we added a COVID check to our office visits, and that's where we kept track of all the phone calls and students and everything that had to do specifically with that chart and COVID. And that's a massive number of touches, of touching the family. We touched that many families that many times. Health services did. So it was good we had the chart, and it was pretty amazing. The amount of families that really cared about sending their sick kids to school. Money said, she's my contact, the public health nurse. She said, we really can't expect just as much of that in the next coming school year, because without the 6-foot social distancing, you know, there's probably going to be students and groups of students who may be asked to self-quarantine for periods of time, just because we won't know as much about if those mitigations were in place. And then moving on to the last page, I did put in some highlights there regarding things I actually produced for health services. The manual that started last summer, it's a living, changing thing. Respiratory protection was training, a certificate, mask testing, and all the way down, I did want to hit on case management, illness logs, and travel self-quarantine. So we actually kept those on paper all year long, and I had everybody go back and count up the number of students we actually followed their self-quarantine through, and it was 1,060, the most being at Helen Haller with 354 students on their illness and travel logs. So if we go to the thank you, I meant to fill this in. I had so much to say in my thank you, but I guess what I couldn't put into words, and it's still difficult for me to put into words, is that we couldn't have done this year without such a recognizable and supportive platform from the school board, the superintendent, all of district administration, the principals, the vice principals. You know, we had such a degree of trust, and I just can't say enough. Obviously, I'm still having trouble putting it into words, that it was due to that platform that as much was done as we were able to do. And I'd like to answer some questions if I could.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. Director.
Great, thank you. And Sonia, thank you so much. Oh, I'm getting a feedback loop. I don't know if that's me. I'll try and talk through it. I appreciate the work of you and your staff in this very complex year. And I'm glad we had the veritable success we did. So I can't say that enough. Just my gratitude for your work. I guess on the topic du jour, and without putting you on the spot, but from your vantage point, what would it take for our district to get to a point where masks could be optional for students? And if you're not sure, that's totally fine. Like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think you're muted. Do you want to unmute, Sonia?
Thanks. How'd that happen? How about that? I was going to say, you know, under my licensure under the Washington State Board of Nursing, I will defer, of course, to the directives and not necessarily give an opinion. But I do think what's reasonable to expect is that as the number of community members and families and students over the age of 12 get vaccinated, and as our community rate goes down, which unfortunately I see it pop back up into the 80s and we're back in the high range. Those things are things we're going to have to watch during the summer, and there is some talk in the fall of opening up the vaccines to kids younger than 12 years old. I do think our response and those mitigations will probably at least be based on those three things.
Great, thank you.
And thank you, Director Koo.
Director Stauffer?
Yes, thank you. Sonia, mine is just comments of gratitude, which there is hard to find the words, because I remember, I think it was that first meeting in March of 2020, and we had just learned of what North Shore School District was going through. A couple of us came back from a briefing at ESD down in Bremerton, and it was basically, it's upon us, and we need to go forth, and you did that. And I just, you have kept the standard, the high standard expectations. You've kept our community safe. which is part of all of this, not only the schools, but our community. And so I just thank you and all your staff for that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stauffer. And I know what it's like not to be able to find the words, because my support from the district this year has been phenomenal. Well, it's always been phenomenal, but you guys went to the mat with me. Thank you.
Director Jeffries?
Yeah, it's been an amazing job. Back last February, March, when all this happened, I'll admit that I had some reservations and concerns whether our district could pull this off or not, because at that time when all of this first started, it was kind of like, oh, not really all that serious on certain people's parts, but your expertise and your leadership, and then your team, and I agree with the district support, have done just an amazing job with a very complex situation. I'm glad you went through all the complexities that you have to go through. It's just not a matter of a simple board vote on whether to have masks or not have masks, or to close school or not to close school. And it's very complex, and we could not have done it without your leadership, your team, the administration's support. And I think it's been phenomenal. And hopefully you're right that the more of us that get the vaccinations, we'll be in a place much better in the fall, and we can make some of these mitigations, including the masks, go away. But keep in mind, we were successful because all that was in place, and I think we did it well. And I just have mucho kudos to you and your staff and everybody involved. It's amazing.
Thank you, Director Jeffries.
Yeah, and just to close out, they've kind of already said it, and I know you gave a lot of credit to the team, but just want to thank you, Sonia, for keeping such a crazy year, keeping our kiddos safe, which in turn kept our staff safe, in turn kept our whole community safe. So I mean, it's it keeps on. I appreciate the focus and the effort, and thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, okay, with that, we are going to keep moving along. We also have our annual ALE report with agenda item 8.02 with Principal Riccobini.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'll be brief. There's not a whole lot to share with the ALE report other than some data. The ALE report references policy 2255 and also WAC 392550060. There are 4 components to the report that are required. The first one is enrollment. The second one is teacher-student ratio. The third one is support from district goals, and then self-evaluation. So the first one I'll talk about is the enrollment information. It's broken down in an additional column this year. We added a new school, which is really exciting to have DVS. I appreciated those comments earlier regarding our informational night. Thank you. We're excited to grow again next year, but you can see in each column here how the grade levels are breaking down for the number of students, both at OPA, DVS, and then the totals on the far right. And so we currently have 141.32 FTE, at least according to that May 1st P223 count in terms of our enrollment information. Go ahead, Tracy. Thank you. This report also requires us to, the ALE report that we put in the EDS system as well requires us to put a notation of our certificated student or teacher-student ratio. At an OPA, the overall is 4:91, and our K-5 program is broken down into multi-grades, and so our K1 teacher teaches 6 students from each one of those grade levels, and then we have 8 in grades 2 through 4, and you can see the ratios broken down there. And as we move through the middle and high school, we have 2 students at the middle, or 2 teachers at the middle level for 33 students, and then 1 teacher at the high school level for just over 13.5 students. At DVS this year, we had in our we broke it down in 3rd grade through 7th grade with 1 teacher and 24 students. And we broke the other part of the program was 8 through 12 with 1 teacher and 26.5 students. The third component is how the program supports the district's strategic learning plan. So I took the statement, the teaching and learning statement. I'm passionate about this statement. A lot of the folks listening right now were in the room when we all created this, and it was fun to put this together. And now that we reflect on it and we can see it actually happening in our schools. So when we think about OPA and DVS, they're certainly very collaborative. They're focused and reflective learning environments, innovative and project-based. And so I just shared a couple of statements, and if you don't mind, I'll just read and share these with you. OPA is a wonderful example of the Teaching and Learning Strategic Plan. It's a parent partnership program where students and families and staff collaboratively create student learning plans based on the interests and areas that students need to grow. It's flexible in its scheduling, innovative in its design, and that has 2 core academic days combined with 2 enrichment days. Parents and community members lead enrichment activities, which illustrates our community partnership and is a great example of the innovation in the school environment. DVS, our newest ALE program, is an online school that provides students with a full array of courses starting next year across the K-12 system. Kids can access courses from advanced placement to a wide range of languages to also recovery coursework. It has online innovative alternative programming, as well as offer students traditional type courses as well. Students and families, because it's part of an ALE program, also have to create student learning plans that address their interests and goals. And the last component of the ALE requirement is a self-evaluation. So I put a link to our CEE data for you to review. And that concludes the ALE program report. Questions?
Okay. Any questions? Director Jeffries.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation the other night in the high school cafeteria about DVS, you and your staff. And again, I was really impressed with the parent comment and the student comment. Do you see these 2 programs, OPA and DVS, growing? And if so, what do you need from us to make it successful, to grow?
Well, thank you for the comment and thank you for your question. Certainly DVS will be growing. We're kind of working through a wait list of students that wanted to start coming this spring, that were wanted to be ready for next fall. So we're already, in terms of the support we need, we're already working to coordinate the hiring of an additional staff member. So we're primed and excited about that. And the one-to-one initiative in terms of technology will really help our students as well. At OPA, we're sort of maxed out with our space. And so the long-term vision in terms of facilities will certainly help OPA grow. There are many students and families that have an interest in being part of OPA's parent partnership program. But right now we're really close to being at the maximum number of students that we can have, just in terms of the those portables that are available to us right now.
You made the comment about one-to-one. Can you explain that a little bit for people that are here that might not know what that meant?
Sure. The district has a vision of having one-to-one technology, one-to-one laptops for students, and actually DVS was piloting that process earlier this year, and we were able to get all of our students at Dungeness Virtual School received a laptop as part of them becoming a member of our school. And next fall, the goal will be that will be district-wide.
And how about connectivity? Was that a major problem, or did you solve those problems?
When we met with our families, we talked about our families at DVS. We talked about the need to have. That's the one thing that they will need. There was several families that we worked with at the district level that they had some issues with their Wi-Fi, and that wouldn't eliminate a family from attending DVS. We just worked with that individual family to have that be successful for them.
Thank you.
Director Stauffer.
Yes, thank you again, Principal Riccobene, and questions were asked and answered there via Director Jeffries. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Director Koo.
Yeah, not to be obnoxious and repeat the same thing. Director Jeffries did ask the question I had, so which was what do you need? But otherwise, job well done, and thank you for your work to lead this important program this past year.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the presentation and the work, and obviously at a crucial time, and I think moving forward next year as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next, we have our finance and enrollment report with Darlene.
Okay, thank you, Director Pickens. We'll start to go over the budget status reports first. So if we pull up the fund balance report that Tracy's got up there, let's see here. Yeah, the fund balance report is just the summary of our 5 funds. And so general fund, you can see that, let me get rid of my little thing there. Okay, you can see that it has our revenues and our expenditures, and you can see that we had $980,000 more dollars of expenditures this month than what came in revenue. So our ending fund balance is $2,305,719.98. And just as it's probably on another spreadsheet, but our revenues are at 71.5% received of what we budgeted for this school year. And our expenditures through the end of May are at almost 95% of what we budgeted. And that includes all of our encumbrances for salaries, benefits, utilities, anything that we know we have to continue to pay through the end of the school year. We've encumbered those dollars. So that includes that and leaves us with about $2,084,000 that are not encumbered for things that just come up and we need to do requisitions for purchase orders. All right, let's move on to the general fund activity report. So this really is the budget status report, and really what I just talked about. It's got our revenues broken down by category. So for local support, our state and our federal dollars have come in, and same with expenditures is broken down by regular instruction, special ed, VOC, all the different categories to get down to what our percentage of expenditures are at 94.06. On the spreadsheet that is our general fund expense summary by activity, that's the one that is broken down so that you can see exactly what was spent in each activity. So let's see, for June, we're going to have a big jump under the board of directors because we have our invoice that we need to pay for our elections, for our February elections. And so that was a hefty little cost. And also we're almost at the end of our state audit. And then once that's finished, then we will be invoiced for that. So you'll see a jump in that $160,000 will jump up quite a bit. So that's just a breakdown of what is spent for each activity in the district. On the last spreadsheet, it's just another way. It's the general fund expense by object. And so this is the one where it's broken down salaries, benefits for both certificated and classified, supplies and materials, purchase services, which are all the things like when we pay our Xerox for our Xerox machines monthly, or our contractual services with the ESD, that would all be under purchase services. So you can see outstanding encumbrances, that's still what's left to pay through the end of August that we know about. Any questions on the budget status reports?
Psych Director Stauffer has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Darlene. For the interest of our community members out there, if you could provide a little more details in that board of directors budget. You mentioned the audit.
Oh, sure.
And,
yes.
And then the elections. If you can speak with a little more detail on what that means exactly.
Well, what that means is that every year when I build our budget, I have to think about all of the things that would come out of a budget line that is specified board of directors. So at that higher level funding, these are the things that are required for our school programs to run. And we know that that is, running levy measures, ballot measures, and that all goes to the county. And so it's a hefty cost when we don't have any other districts or any other entities, county or city entities to share the cost. And so February is always a month where there might not be as many to share that big cost for, when we go out for a measure, compared to November, when probably the hospitals and all those different schools, we all share the cost. So there's always a cost involved. It would be benefits, salaries. Those are for handling the ballots, all the printing of the ballots and mailing of the ballots. We all have to share that, depending on how many measures we have on a ballot. And then as far as the audit, we're required by law to be audited, and we're audited every year. And so usually it's a bigger cost than it is right now because it includes travel. But this year, of course, it's all virtual. So we're uploading things into a secure file system for the auditor to go over. And then she calls and checks in with me weekly. And so we have to pay for her time and those kinds of things, but we won't have to pay for travel. So that'll be a big savings in one sense, but still a cost to the district that's required. So those are why it's under the board of directors. When we budget, we have to think about those things. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. And thank you for your due diligence and your focus on our budget. It was one of the vital part of this job. Thank you.
Welcome.
And I see Director Jeffries has a question as well.
Director Jeffries, hi.
Yeah, hi. Let's see, I hate to use strict financial terms. I don't want to confuse people, but are we in a time of relaxation, everything going along smooth, or are we in a white knuckle period here?
We are not in a white knuckle period here, and you've heard me talk before about possibly doing a budget extension. And right now, we're just waiting to see if we really will use the $2 million that would go up to what we budgeted for expenditures, and talking and thinking about all of the things that could include and how close that would push us to reaching our budget. So right now we're good. And that's because a lot of things that we know about are encumbered. And so we've all talked about, do we have enough encumbered for our utilities? We have all of our employees are already all encumbered for benefits and salaries, things like that. So we've been watching and making sure. And the thing that would really make us need to do a budget extension is that because we were able to receive ESSER funds for COVID, that's revenue, and revenue, you can receive as much revenue as you want. You build a budget. If it goes over that, it's fine. It's great. But under expenditures, because we received that revenue and we're supposed to spend it on certain things related to COVID, that was not built into the budget because we did not know we were going to receive the amount of money that we were going to receive. So here's a perfect example. We are going to use our ESSER dollars for our larger than normal summer school that we're starting, and we'll have to watch that because we normally don't have a summer school that's as large as it is this year, and that will be out of this year's budget. So in August, we may end up doing a budget extension just because we were able to use ESSER dollars, and we didn't know we were going to have this large of a summer school. So I hope that answers your questions for that. In capital projects, when we get to that, yes, we are going to do a budget extension, and it's pretty exciting because we are going to start the Gray Wolf Roof project. And I don't know if they really delivered materials today, but today was the day slated for them to come and deliver materials so that they can start on the roof next week. So that will prompt us to go through with a budget extension in capital projects so that we can pay for that project in this school year, which is great. Does that answer your question?
Well, as always, your reports, our budget is in good hands. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is that it?
That's all the questions for right now.
Okay, good. Then I'll go on to enrollment. So Tracy has created this great spreadsheet for enrollment. And on the spreadsheet, it's got comparisons, a 3-year comparison. And so over where we are right now, you can see in the top grids that is FTE count, not actual head count, but you can see the 2,406.72 for June. That is our current enrollment count. And you can just kind of see going backwards, it's stayed close to the same, up and down a few FTE, but compared to the beginning of the school year, it has dropped quite a bit, almost, 78 students. So that student FTE. And then down below in the green is actual head count. So the 2,441 is our actual head count right now for all of our buildings. So we're just keeping tabs of that. Just a reminder, I budgeted, we're budgeted right now for 2,436 FTE. And then our ALE added onto that bumps that up. I didn't bring that with me, but it bumps it up another 150 FTE. So we're budgeted over where we see right now, but I think that with the added enrollment in ALE, the kindergarten through 2nd grade, and as we start to open up our buildings and maybe even some of those relaxed rules, I think that we'll see our enrollment grow this fall. At least that's my hope. I'm being very positive.
Hey, Darlene, do you have any updates regarding? I know at the state level they did pass some enrollment stabilization measures. Have you had a chance to take a look at how that might impact us?
No, I haven't. Right now we're just working on. They've given us a certain percentage of ESSER dollars so that we can go forth and do some of our programs this summer. And that's as far as I've gotten as far as, what things would look like. So maybe at our next meeting in July, I'll have more information about that and I'll be able to share that out.
Okay.
I'll make sure that I have information on that.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions from the board? All right. Thank you, Darlene.
You're welcome.
All right. And last but not least, we have our annual Title I and LAP report. That's from Superintendent Brine. Dr. Brine.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to talk about the LAP, which is the Learning Assistance Program. And that is, I'm going to turn my camera on there if you guys don't mind. The LAP program are state monies, and we, Tracy, if you want to go to the second slide, please. We received $797,653 this year, and then Helen Haller received an additional high poverty $168,288 that they used to buy laptops for their students. They also used it for their after-school program. And so what we use our LAP for, it offers supplemental services to our students. And we generally use it for English language arts and math. And we use it at all schools, K-12. So we have both elementary schools get LAP funding. Squim Middle School gets LAP funding, and Squim High School gets LAP funding. And if you can scroll up, Tracy, we'll talk about what we spend that money on. Literacy at both elementary schools, and as you know, we are teaching our little ones to read, and we are teaching our intermediate students, since they know how to read, they now read to learn. And so our little ones are learning to read, and the older ones are reading to learn. Anyway, literacy at both elementary schools. Extended learning day services are available at Helen Haller. The Squim Middle School uses those funds to support ELA and math. We had an instructional coach, Pam Landoni, that was paid out of LAP services, and she worked at both Grey Wolf and at Squim Middle School. And then Squim High School uses their LAP funds to support math and behavior improvement. They also had Agile Mind, which is an intensified algebra program. They supported students in the acquisition of math skills, study skills and organization, and then it's also allocated to support students requiring significant behavioral support. So our LAP funds are spent very wisely, and they go directly to students. Okay, Tracy. And some future goals would be to expand the scope of LAP services to include other allowable services such as extended learning time, extended learning opportunities, family engagement, which we now have a family engagement coordinator. And I'll talk a little bit about that when it's time for my report, but we are using some of our LAP dollars because we need to get out and connect with our families. So we are, and then additional graduation assistance. So we have our fifth-year senior program, as you know, so that students that need extra credits can come in and get those credits, and we have a designated teacher for that. All righty. Next, any questions on the LAP program? All right, so then we have Title I, Part A, and that's a federal program. And that is designed to provide all children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education and to close educational achievement gaps. And this funding comes to us from our free and reduced lunch numbers. And that is also how we get our ESSER funding. So at our elementary schools and our middle school receive the Title I funding. Our high school does not. And it's all based on our free and reduced lunch numbers. So at the district level, funds are allocated for teaching and learning support staff. And again, we plug in our equity and family engagement coordinator in that funding model. So Title I Part A continues to support elementary math instruction. Extended learning time in the summer. We are using actually our ESSER funds this summer, which are funneled through Title I for our summer school. And for the first time, because we had extra ESSER funds, we're providing transportation so that would not be a barrier for students that have been invited to summer school that would like to come to summer school and have no way to get to summer school. So we are providing transportation. And then Squim Middle School utilizes their funds for supplemental instruction to support, again, English language arts and math. And some future goals would be teaching and learning and building teams. We do have, and I'll talk a little bit about this in my report, but we've hired 1.5 professional development coordinators, which will be incorporated into our teaching and learning teams, and they will connect with all of our schools, K-12, and be utilized not only as professional development coordinators in our overarching professional development for staff, but they will also be instructional coaches out in our buildings with our new staff and veteran staff that would like some, that would like some extra strategies or extra coaching if they so desire, but for sure with our new staff. And so Yeah, so I think we spend our money extremely wisely, and it again goes all towards educating our students and making sure that they have what they need in order to walk across the graduation stage when they're in the 12th grade. So questions?
Doesn't look like any questions out there. I appreciate Dr. Prine, what you said about reducing that barrier with transportation for students. I think that's so important. I'd like to, I know the ESSER funds don't last forever, but I would certainly appreciate seeing that that lasting even longer if we have the ability to do so, because I think it's important that we provide that that access.
We agree. We just felt like if whatever barriers we can remove, we need to do so, and that was a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you to the transportation staff for figuring that out, and the food service staff for figuring out our meals.
All right, and I believe you're up again, Dr. Prine.
Yes. So I will very quickly give my report. I went to the OPA, the Olympic Peninsula Academy graduation on the 4th. I think I mentioned that at the last meeting, but I wanted to not forget our OPA graduates. That was a really fun celebration, and again, families were there, and it was just lovely to see people together in a group. And then the following Friday, we did have the Sequim High School graduation, and again, that came off flawlessly. It was the first time that the students had to sit in the bleachers, but I think they were so happy to be together. I don't think they minded at all, and they all looked fabulous in their graduation gowns, and the families out in the audience were so proud, and we were so proud of our graduates. So that was just a huge celebration, because again, as Principal Langston said, it's been a year and 3 or 4 months since those students have even gotten to be back together all in the same space. So that was really fun. I was also at the drive-by goodbyes at Sequim Middle School and at Grey Wolf and at Helen Haller. And even though they were similar, they were a little bit different, and they were a lot of fun, and parents were happy to drive their students by and honk and get pictures taken, and balloons were waving, and again, lovely festivities. So that was really, really fun. We have started summer school at our 2 elementary schools that started today's Monday. Yes, it started today, and it will go through July 2nd. And then the high school is actually going through July 9th, because they are a credit recovery program. And then the middle school will be having theirs in August as a jumpstart program for their students. So summer school is in full session, and we're excited about that. We have added a couple of new positions, I should say staff, to the positions we currently had. We did add a new Equity and Family Engagement Coordinator, Marin. If you haven't met her, I would encourage you to give her office a call and go by and meet her. She is reaching out to all of our families that have any kind of need or need any kind of resource from the school district. And so she hails from Idaho right now, and she and her husband and 3 babies are in the process of moving here. So we're happy to have her. And then we just hired a professional development coordinator. Actually, we hired a 1.5, so we have a full-time and a half-time. Again, we looked at our LAP and our learning assistant program and our Title I funding. And because it's a K-12 position, we felt like it was a really big ask for one person. So we added, after talking to Darlene, who is our financial guru, she said, yes, we could add a half a position. So we have added Casey Lanning as the full-time professional development coordinator and Becky Stanton as our half-time professional development coordinator. So we're happy to have both of them on board. And let me think, I think that is all I have for my report at this time.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Prine. Any questions from the board for Dr. Prine? Dr. Jeffries.
Yeah, not really a question. I've met some of the new hires and read about some of the new hires, and I'm really excited about the people you've been interviewing and the people you've been able to hire. I think Great things for SWIM, and some fantastic people have been coming on board. So I'm looking forward to the exciting things they'll bring to the system and to our kids.
Thank you. And that is the most exciting part, is what it will do for our kids and our families.
Great. Director Stauffer?
Yes, I just wanted to add for our kids, and so appreciate your work there, Dr. Prine, and then those new hires. And after this past 16 months of the complexity of all we've gone through, the future is looking a lot more stable. And thank you for that work, and appreciation to your staff too. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Director Koo?
Starting to sound like a broken record here, but yeah, this felt appropriate time. I think I may have even put this out to the Twitterverse, but thank you, Jane, for coming in and everything you've done to just grab the bull by the horns, the bull being a very complex and nuanced challenge, and get us to where we're sitting here today post-graduation. We've got a pipeline of young little bobbleheads getting ready to join our district. And I'm just overjoyed at where we're at, and can't thank you enough for your work, your tireless work, and frankly for not giving up on us too, recognizing that there are complexities that extend the original horizon we had approached you about. So thank you for that too. This will be remembered in terms of Herculean efforts to stabilize the district and get us back to a semblance of normal. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And it has been my pleasure. I have loved this work, and I've loved the people I've worked with. And I want to say a personal thank you to Sonia myself. She was one of the first people I met when I came into the district, and I was so relieved to meet her. I thought, okay, Sonia's got it going on. So I mean, you always worry about all the things going on in the school district, but when you have really good people in place, and we have really good people in place. So I just want to say thank you to the cabinet, the administrators, the staff, the teachers, Sonia. I mean, it's a going machine, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Prine. Appreciate your work. Okay. And that brings us to our board business, and we have some cabinet contracts to take a look at. And before I ask for a motion, I'm going to go back again to Dr. Prine just to review her recommendation here, and then after that we'll look for a motion.
Okay, so we have had to. This is one of the items that we've had to look at because people were placed when they were hired at different points on the salary, and there wasn't really a schedule, so they were just placed wherever they were placed. And so we needed to start looking at our cabinet level positions, our administrator positions we looked at last fall. There are a number of other positions we're currently looking at that we will be sharing with the board when we have that information. And so the three contracts that are on the board agenda for approval tonight are the Assistant Superintendent, the Director of Business and Finance, and the Director of Human Resources. And what we found with the Director of Business and Finance and Director of Human Resources and the Assistant Superintendent, I asked our HR Director, Victoria Ballant, to go and do a cost analysis or a market analysis of those three positions with like districts of similar size as far as student population, and tell me what, and then she showed me what we came up with, because there was such a disparity in salaries between the Director of Business and Finance and the Director of Human Resources. And I've not been in a system where there was that big of a disparity. So anyway, when we looked at that, we saw that the Director of Business and Finance had seen a net decrease of 11% since 2018. So a market study of 7 districts showed the same job at 30% higher than we were paying. And so then we looked at Director of the Human Resources position, and that salary was a bit higher when that person was hired into that position. However, it was still below markets, the market. And so we have asked to make those two positions comparable to what's in the area. And then if we could just go back to the assistant superintendent, please. So we also did a market analysis with the assistant superintendent, and what we found was that their districts of our like size don't have assistant superintendents, so we really couldn't do a market analysis. So based on that information, I am recommending the 3 contracts that you have in front of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but we have done our due diligence on these 3 contracts, and I am happy to answer questions.
And what we'll do is, well, first I'll probably take a motion first and a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion and questions. So, Director Stauffer?
Yes, I'm prepared to make a motion, and my motion is to approve as presented by Superintendent.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Either Director Jeffries or Director Koo, either of you want a second? I saw your voice click on, Director Jeffries. I'm not sure if you were saying something or not.
I just wanted clarification on the motion.
Okay.
Is the motion for all 3 contracts or just one at a time?
My motion is for all 3, which is why I said as presented. So for clarification, all 3 contracts.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Let's open it up for discussion and or questions. I'm going to go to Director Koo first.
All right, can you hear me? I was having trouble there.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. First, I want to start by saying thank you to Dr. Prine and your staff for kind of right-sizing what I would agree was a broken situation, a puzzling inequity that I guess I don't need to dig too far into as far as why, because we're finally at a point where we're correcting it. I guess the fiscal conservative in me feels obliged to ask the question of, and I guess it goes without saying, we've had further discussion in an executive session about this. So it's with that pre-discussion that I asked this question of what safe measures are there in place to keep this an overall escalation of salaries from getting too ahead of our skis. I don't believe we're there for the record, but we talked about some pretty big numbers in that discussion, and so like I said, I just feel obliged to ask the question of how do we ensure we're consistently right sizing ourselves and not. And there's the tension too of the keeping up with the Joneses, and I know that's a much more complex matter that every employer faces. But there seems to be a unique flavor in the education sector, and maybe I could extrapolate even further to say the public sector. Are there any thoughts or pearls of wisdom you could share on how that's tempered or right sized in such a manner that we're not facing a challenge 5 years down the road going, oh my gosh, what do we do?
Well, and I think that's a fair question. So thank you. Can I answer? I'm sorry, Vice President Pickens, is it okay for me to answer?
Yes,
okay.
Please do. Sorry
you.
about that.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, in the contract, it states that any one of these 3 people really needs to negotiate with the superintendent. And also, I would say that whatever the going rate is for the other bargaining groups, if they were coming to me, I would say this is what's fair. So after we've done our market analysis and we've figured out where we need to be, then they are at the same rate, in my opinion, if I'm in charge, they're at the same rate as every other bargaining group. Now, they are not in a bargaining group and they are not tied to a bargaining group, and you don't want them to be tied to a bargaining group because they bargain with all the groups. However, having said that, they should also get the same. If it's an IPD of 2%, they should get that. If it's a 1.5% that we give to all the bargaining groups, then it should be that. If it's a 4%, they should get that. So they should go with whatever the trend is in the district, so that it keeps the salaries in check, but it doesn't cause them to fall behind every single year either. And they have to come every single year and be approved by the board. So that's another fail-safe way that the board has to say, hey, we just noticed, that there was no increase here, or there was this much increase, and why was that? So the board has every right to say yes or no.
Great, thank you. And you've already answered the follow-on question I had, which is how can we work to assure that inequity doesn't happen in the future? And like I said, I don't need to unpack the past too much, but frankly, perhaps that was a question unasked, in the previous board of how we got askew here. So I appreciate you answering the question, doing this work, and got something to reflect on personally.
And the other thing I will tell you is anything that the board agrees to in a board meeting, those notes go in a notebook. And they go in the notebook in the business office. And I will tell you, the keeper of that notebook knows everything that's in that notebook. And so any past history or anything that's in that notebook is duly noted. So that's where we started our information gathering. And then we just continued on with how we gathered our information. So.
Thank you.
Director Stauffer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Prine. One question, then I have a comment, but if you could, for the sake of our audience, define what the IPD is for our community members, because those of us in the day-to-day work, we get that, but want to hear from our community members. And then I'll go with the comment after that. Okay,
so IPD is the percentage that the state gives us to push through to contracts, and this year it's 2%. So when the state says we're giving you a 2% increase, price deflator is an IPD, you get a 2% added to your salary. So whatever your salary is, everybody gets the 2% because the state pushes through a 2%.
Thank you for the clarification. And I'll just add, I appreciate what I can see are the bumpers that are in place that will guide us along, and then yes, coming back to the board to make that final decision. I like the fact of we stabilized it in a sense, because there was some unknown out there, and I like the book you just mentioned about, and the keeper of the knowledge, which is very, very important, and then we have those policies, and we can go back to those policies, whoever's sitting in these seats, and next year, year after, so forth. There's that book of knowledge. And so I, again, appreciate your work, the cabinet's work, especially Victoria and Darlene, because they were in the meat of this. And and yes, this applies to their contract, but they work through all those with the other associations and what that means. So thank you.
Thank you.
Director Jeffries.
Yep, and I appreciate all the efforts, and this will put us on a more equitable footing salary-wise going forward, and hopefully we can maintain that. And the thing you mentioned about the keeper of the book, in the future it may not be Darlene, it may not be Victoria, but hopefully it's clear enough that whoever is at the helm will know what happened, why it happened, and what should be done. So I really appreciate all your efforts and the efforts of Darlene and Victoria and your staff. So thank you.
Welcome. Yes, thank you to all of them.
Yeah, and just to add, basically at every level of our organization, I've used this phrase before, but I think we have to be mindful of what the market trends are if we're going to recruit and retain the best of our staff to serve the students, and Certainly at our cabinet level is not an exception to that rule by any means. So I appreciate you taking a look at this and just being aware of what those market trends are.
Thank you.
So any further discussion before we vote? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Thank you. Brings us to 10.02, the approval of the Helen Heller Foundation. The approval of the Heller Foundation grant. Sorry, looking for a motion on that one. Or
Move
did you
approve
want
as
to?
presented?
Thank you. And do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And I just didn't know, Dr. Prine, if you had any comments to say on that before we voted on this. Did you have anything to add on this particular one?
All I want to say is the Haller Foundation grant is something that the district applies for every year. And last year it was used for our social emotional learning materials. And so I am excited to submit this grant and see where it leads us.
Great. Thank you. Director Koo.
That was my question, just a little more context on it. So happy to approve this. I trust our administrator to bring this forward. And yeah, I thank you for pursuing this too. The Haller Foundation is a dynamic resource that is focused on education support in our community. So good job.
Yeah. Great. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion approved. On to we have several policies that are due for a first reading. And the one thing I will note, and I'll ask to see if Dr. Prine wanted to add anything to this, but we do have one that we need to take a look at a little bit further. And so it may not be back for a second reading, depending on if there's significant changes. And that's agenda item 10.18 or policy 5403. So I was notified that we do have to do some additional research on that and how it correlates with our CBAs, I believe. Does that capture it, Dr. Prine?
It does capture it. Thank you. And since these are just first reads and you don't approve it, yeah, we would like to bring that one back to the next policy committee meeting and add the information that is missing. So, yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I did not see which hand went up first, so let's go with Director Koo.
Thank you. And just so we're not just operating in a vacuum, this is first reading. I appreciate the time we've been able to spend on these policies and just don't have any other questions. So thank you.
Director Stauffer.
Yes, similar comment, but I would add, if we could hear from Tracy, just a brief of which ones we will be seeing there at our next policy workshop. No long detail, just a quick, so our audience here can hear and learn of the process that's involved here. It's this is a vital part of our job as board directors is reviewing and approving policy. And I also appreciate Director Jeffrey's needlepoint focus on that we follow through with these items. So thank you.
Thank you. And Tracy, do you have an answer to that question regarding summary of kind of what we're going to be covering next workshop?
Yes, we are still going to be in the 5,000 personnel items. I think we might be scooching into the 6,000 business. We were going to probably wrap this up in September. In October, we've got a blank, not agenda, but something scheduled in case there needs to, but it should be wrapped up in September.
Okay. And Director Jeffries.
Yeah, I don't know how you want to kind of cover all these one at a time, or, for example, this one, the 3520. I don't know if this is the time or place, but I know there's always this time of year confusion, rumors, stories about what happens to unpaid fees, especially for the seniors. And I'm not sure this policy directs it. Maybe it's in a procedure. I know there's some state laws involved in unpaid fees and what happens. So I don't know if that would be the place to clarify it in this particular policy or not.
Let's see.
I-
Go, Dr. Prine, can you speak to that?
Yes. Are you Larry? Excuse me, Director Jeffries. Are you talking about 3520?
Yes, 3520.
Right. Darlene is ready to talk about that because she specifically asked to have this one added at the end of last week. So Darlene, jump in, if you would, please, if that's okay, Vice President Pickens.
That is.
Okay, so because of House Bill 1660, the intent of that bill was to make sure that interscholastic athletics and activities, which are a vital part of enriching students' educational experiences and developing students into responsible adults. The research supports the theory that students who participate in extracurricular activities have better grades and higher standardized test scores, increased school attendance, improved health and wellness, and positively enhanced educational experiences. Many school districts require Associated Student Body or ASB cards to participate in extracurricular activities, and many school districts charge a fee for the ASB cards. Many school districts require a participation fee for extracurricular activities, and the fees associated with obtaining ASB cards and participating in those extracurricular activities may create an obstacle to participation in extracurricular activities by students who are low income. So the legislature, they intended to reduce the obstacle to participation in the extracurricular activities caused by the fees that would be charged to students who are low income. So they created an equitable access to opportunities to improve the academic, social, and emotional outcomes. And so basically what the outcome of this House bill is that based on the free and reduced applications, if parents sign to release that information, it will go into our InTouch system so that as students are paying for participation fees, ASB cards, dances, competitions, conferences, plays, home games, uniforms, dues, those kinds of things, fees will be waived. And what it won't cover is, let's just say that they go to a dance and you have your photo taken there. The photo is not covered. That's optional. It doesn't cover, spirit wear or concessions or yearbooks and ads. Those kinds of things are all extra things. But the things that are actually extracurricular activities, those are the things that are impacted. So we're working on that right now, but we have to have in place that it specifies in this policy that we are going to follow House Bill 1660. And also we need to put in there that it also includes family members or members of the community that are age 65 or older who may be of low income, and will also reduce their fee. So I know one of the things that we've all talked about is what's the fiscal impact of that. And because what it will do is it will reduce ASB revenues and increase, ASB expenditures really for the district. And so figuring out, what percentage of the students qualify for free and reduced, and what percentage of the parents actually give consent to share the data, and the difference of what we would have received in revenue if this House bill wasn't in place. So that'll be some things going forward that we'll really have to think about, and what would be the ways for revenue to come in, fundraisers and the like. So the next step in this whole process was to revise our board policy that included student fees and fines. And as far as what Director Jeffries is referring to, fees and fines that are sitting out there that have not been collected, probably for many reasons, but a lot of it has to do with food service. And food service, we already know, is affected by free and reduced. That was, one of the things that it's for. But the outstanding bills of students and adults that's out there, while we in the accounting part of the world take care of that every year, and we have to show that we use local levy dollars to pay for anything that's not paid for as far as bills, food service bills. It still sits there waiting for revenue to come in from the families who have those bills. And so there's still things happening to remind parents that they have outstanding fees and fines. When they get to be a senior, seniors are still allowed to walk at graduation. They don't receive their diploma until they pay their fees and fines. But I can tell you that we work really hard with the donations that come in for food service to, at graduation time, apply them to the seniors' outstanding fees and fines first. But the rest of the year, equitably distributed across grades and balances. So that's one that we're still working on, and thank goodness we have somebody in our nutrition services who continues to work on this with us. And we have many people in the community that are gracious enough to give us donations, and we want to be mindful and use those appropriately towards our food service bills. So that is a big one. A lot of that changed when the no shaming law came into play, and a lot of things changed with that. So yeah, we do have an outstanding balance out there, but we're working away on it.
Thank you, Darlene. And also for Director Jeffries, another piece, and I'll in case there's any follow-up questions on 3520, we'll get to those. But if there are other policies too that we want to address, we certainly can go through each one, or just based on any of them that you would request to talk through, whether it be questions or concerns. So I want to make sure we don't just pass through any of them that we want to talk about. So we'll have that opportunity. But regarding policy 3520, I see a couple of hands up. Any additional questions or thoughts on 3520? Director Stauffer?
Yes, I just, as I remember the legislation on it, and so I appreciate Darlene's attention to detail on there in the House Bill 1620. And there's a date, I think 1 July is when some things are going into effect, but I would encourage my colleagues here to review the bill synopsis, or which provides the details, which then turned into the RCW, and which then turned into the policy from WASA for us. So, but thank you again, Darlene.
Thank you. Dr. Prine, is your hand still up? Did you have something else?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I need to put it down. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So I'm not seeing anything else on 3520. Director Jeffries, did you have questions about another one you'd like us to pull up?
Well, surprisingly, I don't have too many. I do appreciate the effort on annually. Annually is one of my pet peeves. I'm always asking, well, what does annually mean? And I noticed in some of these, we were starting to add language like annually evaluated by his or her supervisor as consistent with the applicable collective bargaining process, or annually as prescribed by law or the bargaining process or policy. If we don't really want to assign a day and date to that. So I appreciate that. And so going through, and when we go back through all of these, annually, periodically, that kind of terminology, I think we need to clean it up as best we can. Let's see. I do appreciate 5252, staff participation in political activities. I appreciate very much we've got WASDA sent an opinion, or no, that's not quite the right word, but they sent us a email saying, well, this is what school board members can and can't do during public elections, which really isn't addressed in this policy. So I really appreciate WASDA providing some clarification on that. Let's see, what else? Going, I want to look at my other sheet. Oh, on 5251, I'm sorry, go back. In there, it's mentioned the term de minimis is used, conflict of interest, and in policy 3515 says go to procedure 3515 to find out what de minimis means. And it means, according to that policy 3515, means $50. And I don't know if we want to take a look at that down the road, given inflation or not, but it's something to think about. And I really appreciate all of Stacy's efforts. And that's about it. Thank you.
All right. The one that I did want to bring up that I still kind of feel might be a potential issue was regarding, policy 5253. Not sure if you can bring that one up, Tracy. The markup version potentially, so we can see the red. So the language that I still think might be problematic with that particular one would be as it relates to, and we brought this up, I believe, at the workshop, relates to friending. And I could just, which I believe is in the, where is it?
Sorry, I really am trying to bring these up. They're just being a little slow. I went back and pulled our the work that we had done previously, and I don't know if you guys were able to open that. And I went ahead and updated the changes that you guys had previously approved with Dr. Clark and your language there. I went ahead and updated this from our policy meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the first document I pulled up still had it in there, so maybe I did
both, or so all this yellow was added after our policy meeting based on me going back and looking at what you guys had previously approved.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. It's right there at the top of that page. regarding, or further, no, the top of the second page actually. But yeah, regarding where I saw the issue is where we have family members, we're a smaller community, and there might be staff members that do have a friending status with either a cousin or a relative that might also be a student. So, but I see that line is crossed off in this version. So, thank you very much. That addresses that particular one. Director Jeffries. Oh, and yeah, I'll go to Director Jeffries first. And Tracy, I'm not sure if you still have your hand up or. Go ahead, Director Jeffries.
Okay, yeah, I would still say, I kind of favor language in there that says.
Sorry,
staff members.
Director Jeffries, you're cutting out quite a bit. Is that just on my end or?
No, you were cutting out too, so I'm not sure. It must be on the system. Can you hear me okay? Well, I'm going to assume you can hear me. I still have concerns about staff members friends of your children on Facebook or contacting friends. I think that's something that has to be very careful of and make sure it's appropriate. And I don't know where to put this other one. Maybe in student rep. We talked a little bit. Student reps should probably contact, our student board reps should probably contact the superintendent's office or their designee rather than board members, student reps contacting each other directly. But I'm not sure exactly where that would be put in. Thank you.
I apologize. I think maybe it was just on my end, but I did not capture most of what Director Jeffries said. Was that just on my end, Tracy?
I could hear him fairly well.
Okay, I think it was on my end, but it appears to be fixed right now. So, so I apologize, Director Jeffries. Is there an action that I need to, or is there a question that I need to direct an answer to? I did catch the very tail end of what you said, but.
I think we might have lost you again, Eric.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you. We might have lost Larry, though.
Okay. Director Jeffries, are you there?
I'm here. I didn't hear you call. Okay. I didn't hear you ask.
Oh, I had just said that I only caught the very tail end of what you said. I didn't know if there was a question that you needed answered or not.
No, just the last thing is where might we put that about the contacting student reps? Our board reps should be contacted through the superintendent's office versus board to students.
Okay. Dr. Prine, is that?
I don't know where that fits in.
Yes.
Where that fits in.
So we will figure out where that fits in, but yes, they do contact the superintendent's office as opposed to individual board members. Yep.
Thanks. Director Stauffer?
Yes, we're reading back through what we had talked about with Dr. Clark before, and I'm hearing what Director Jeffries is saying, and I encourage us to keep some of this wording because I think about other organizations, and there's always a we'll call it a 2 or 3 person where there's not a singular point of contact with the student. And regardless if it's family member stuff, it keeps that student safe, and it also keeps that staff member safe. And so some of the wording we put in there, I think, was that a staff member should be informing their building supervisor type thing, that because some of this came out of some inappropriate behavior in the past, and so that's somewhat the elephant in the room probably on this, and that we need to ensure the safety of those students and then also the safety of staff. That's my 25 cents.
Thank you. Any further conversation, discussion on 52, 53 at all? All right, any further discussion on any of the other policies that we're doing first reading on? Director Jeffries.
I'm just going to say, you want to briefly explain to the community members that are on board how this works? First reading, second reading, what does it mean?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. There's obviously we do have a process that we go through, and Dr. Prine, I'll invite you to jump on this conversation as well. But with any of our items, we of course invite community members can certainly speak to these items, but board directors as well. But we never like a policy or a change to a policy to be a surprise to either board directors or community members. We want to be very thoughtful about this process, and if there are concerns that get brought up, it can be brought back to be worked on some more based on the feedback we provide, and then brought again, and it doesn't actually get approved until we have a second reading. So right now we're just in the process of first reading, and in this case it's a little unique because we're also reviewing all these policies in a workshop. So in essence, these policies are actually getting 3 different looks. Both starts off at the workshop, and then right now we're in the first reading, and we'll most of these, although not all, will be moved on to the second reading, and that's when we'll get the final approval. Dr. Prine, anything else to add on that?
Nope, you've articulated that well. Thank you.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I would just point out that the policy workshop and of course our regular meetings are all open to the public and announced, and they're welcome to attend.
Absolutely. Yep. And one slight difference would be at our policy workshop, we don't have the opportunity for public comment in that forum, in that setting. However, definitely do at the regular board meetings for sure. So, okay, we are, unless there's anything further regarding our first readings of policies, we are to the good of the order. Anything for the good of the order? Looks at, well, first of all, we do have some upcoming meetings coming up. July 19th board workshop and regular board meeting July 19th. But and I believe, Dr. Prine, was there a couple that we're still waiting to find out about, if we can reschedule some of those ones that we recently had to move?
Yes, I have contacted Dr. Campbell, who is working with us on our equity workshop, and I've not heard back from her today, but she and I texted back and forth a couple of times today, and she's looking at her calendar. That will probably not happen until between July 19th and I'm hoping by August 5th, our next meeting, so we can report on that, because she'll be starting to work with the administrators around the 12th.
Thank you. And sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. We still sort of had it open for the good of the order, and I see Director Stauffer, I'm not sure, I see your hand. I'm not sure if it was about future board meetings or for the good of the order, but hand it over to you.
I'll call it good of the order. I meant to say this in my board communications. So there's the food bank has one more CARES food box distribution day, and that's Wednesday. And this is a program that started back in May of last year, and averaging about 600 families per of those days. So this is the last one, and then that will continue though at a smaller scale over at the food bank, but so it won't be on the scale that it has been, utilizing community volunteer resources that they've been doing. And then also a shout out to the Boys and Girls Club that's started their summer lunch program, in which they distribute summer lunch meals to 4 sites in our community, Monday through Friday. Sites being Carrie Blake Park, Oak Creek Apartments, the Mountainside Apartments, and Sunset. The name escapes me. It's up by Avamere. And so they're distributing those meals at 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, unless there's a holiday, through the end of summer till we go back to school. So a shout out to Boys and Girls Club for that partnership, and also Food Bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, with that, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all, and hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you all.